something a bit different today. I'm pretty interested in the history of football, and given that my club is Man United, I've been doing a bit of digging about where they used to play in the history of Man United. So I thought I'd go and uncover some of their previous grounds. I'm here in Old Trafford at the moment. Well, I'm in Stretford at the moment, heading up Chester Road towards Old Trafford. So I'm going to start at Old Trafford Football Ground, Theatre of Dreams, and I'm going to pop over to East Manchester, because we're in the Master Manchester here. Pop over to East Manchester, see if we can find the, well, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find where they used to play. Here we are, down St Busby Way, towards Old Trafford, Theatre of Dreams. 74,000 seater, I think, around about these days. Munich Tunnel to my left. Holy Trinity statue up there, just in front of Hotel Football. So that's where we are now. Looking lovely in this spring sunshine. But now we're going to pop back over to East Manchester and find out where I've never been to there before, but find out where the old football clubs were, the old football stadiums. So now I'm in East Manchester, just on Oldham Road, and it was an Oldham Road that the original players around 1880 would go into pubs along Oldham Road to get changed and then walk up to North Road Stadium. As you can see, we're coming under one of the old railways, and the original Manchester United were formed by railway workers working for the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Company up at this Newton Heath depot, which is where we're just about coming to now. The original club actually was both, like most early football clubs, was cricket and football. Cricket was the summer game, football the winter game, hence you end up standing on terraces in the driving sleet these days, because it's still the winter game. Squeeze through here. Oh, this might be. So now this is Moseley Street, I think it is, off Oldham Road. So you would get the old players back in 1878 when it was first formed. You'd get the players and the spectators walking this street off Oldham Road towards North Road rather. This is proper old industrial Manchester. You can feel the vibe changing. There's so much new in Manchester, but this is the old stuff under the original railway line. Newton Heath sign there. That's one railway line. I think this will be the other now. This was the Lancashire Yorkshire Railway line. Just down there. And this is the only section of the old North Road. So this is the original North Road that people were walking around down, and that Newton Heath LYR Football Club fans and players walk down. No sign for North Road, and actually because a lot of it up there beyond the end of that tree at the end has obviously been redeveloped, it's now called Northampton Road, but this is the old North Road. So we'll have to go out and take another right, which bypasses this bit of land here, and head down Northampton Road to rejoin where North Road would have been. Pretty busy these days. So in the time of North Road football ground, straight ahead would have been open fields, and where all the cars are up here, they would have been railway lines coming into the sidings. So as we sweep to the left, you can see North Road there, and it becomes North Road, what was North Road now. And that would have been all railway lines, and just about where the building starts there would have been some of the big sheds for the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway workers. It was the carriage and wagon works, so they would build all the carriages and fit them out and repair them. And that was all on the right hand side here where the police building is now. So that would have been all along here. So all of the old footballers who played for Newton Heath would have worked in here. A little bit different. Old dirty old sidings, big sheds, steam trains. And that continued all the way up to this right hand turn. Now interesting, I looked at on Google Earth that there's a car park there which may contain some of the old footings of the original buildings. Let's go and have a quick look. Don't expect to be too excited. But a bit of industrial past. Maybe not. Under there probably there were some of the footings for the old sheds. Don't want to go in because of, you know what parking I like, those kind of companies. Probably end up getting a ticket in the post. So this is where the North Road ground was, and just up there to the left of that building is Moston Vale, I think it is, which was marshy, polluted, horrible kind of land. But all this land on the right was owned by the church. And in 1878 things were changing. Apparently the first recorded use of the word weekend was in 1879, and professional football was coming in 1850. Before that you had to be amateurs, and lots of factory owners, mill owners wanted their workers to be fit and healthy. There was a bit of a movement to give people time off for spiritual and physical education and fulfilment. In 1878 they created a ground on the right here. So the workers, they paid for it, paid the church a rent, set up the ground, and the workers at this carriage and wagon works could come and play here. And interestingly, it is exactly here where that pigeon is. That was about the edge of the old football stadium, North Road Stadium. So you could play football in the grass bits here, and that is the actual turf of the first Man Utd Stadium. It went from about towards the end of that building to the right over there, where that little white car is. So that is all the original ground of Newton Heath. Not the best of grounds apparently, as you can imagine, probably just a field. It was not too rocky. but that's what most of them were like in those days. But by 1892 things were getting a bit more serious. They'd become independent of the railway, and they were now just called Newton Heath, and they wanted to be more of a commercial concern. Obviously it could be self-supporting, and they wanted to charge spectators. They were getting thousands of spectators, but it was free to view. It was an amateur game. But with the land being on church property, the church decided that it was a bit unethical to charge people and didn't want to allow them to commercialise everything. So a move was on the cards. Didn't want to move too far for the players, who was many of them still working at the railway, and the fans, a lot of them who would be local, because there were other teams to support around this time. Apparently the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway had got another team for the Motability department, who were called Newton Heath Locos. So they didn't want to move too far away for the fans, who many of them would just have to walk there. So they moved about a mile and a half down the way out of Newton Heath and to Clayton. So that's where we're heading next. It was pretty useful because 10-acre lane, because initially they managed to rent the stadium. It was an old Bradford Athletic Stadium, and they managed to rent it for 6 months and then eventually bought it. So that's where we're going, to the Bank Street Stadium in Clayton. You can't believe this is right near the centre of Manchester. Old railway lines and canals. This road becomes Bank Street, so I guess a lot of supporters would have wandered down here. You might. It's very close to the new Man Utd Stadium. You might get a peep of that. It's literally old Bank Street. In fact, I can just see it through the bushes there. The old Bank Street Stadium was literally a 5-minute walk. So this is now Bank Street, I think. And down here on the right you'll see blue railings, and that is where Bank Street Stadium was. In fact, there's a plaque on one of the houses over here, down here on the left apparently. So 1893 they moved here, where this big factory building is now. It was surrounded by factories, very industrial then, and apparently there were quite a few. It was a crappy ground and there were lots of pollution, so when you're playing football you get fog of chemicals and smoke billowing across the pitch, and it was supposed to be quite a poor pitch, poor quality. In one of the early matches, I think it was 1895, they played Wolverhampton, and the manager complained that the pitch was just sandy shale with the occasional tuft of grass. But then he would have complained about we beat them 14-0, which would have been the biggest ever victory, but apparently the match got cancelled. But by this time they were not doing great. They'd been dropped a league or two, and they were struggling. The attendance was falling off, and they were in a financial hardship. So they decided to have a fundraising bazaar in the centre of Manchester at the St James's building to try and raise some much needed cash to keep the club afloat. So that's where we're going to head next, St James's Building on Oxford Street, because it was there that Manchester United was properly founded, just from a freak event involving the club captain Harry Stafford and his dog, which I'm sure if you know Man United history you'll be well aware of. Just turned out the bottom of Bank Street. I'm driving towards town. There you can see behind that white building the Man City Stadium. And this is all the Etihad complex. Ooh. But it's incredible how close Man United and Man City effectively were. 5 minutes from the old Newton Heath Stadium, just pre-Manchester United. We're in Manchester, the centre of Manchester, and hopefully just up here is St James's Building. Hopefully you can get down. That big white building there, I think it's the St James's Building, where United had their bazaar, their fundraising bazaar in 1902. They had about £2.5 grand, and their then chairman issued a winding up order to recover about 250 quid of it. There you go, see the building up there with the clock outside, it says St James's Building. Apparently that is a more recent building than the one where they originally held their bazaar, but it was here that Harry Stafford's dog escaped. It was a big St Bernard called Major, and John Henry Davis, who was a local brewer, owned lots of pubs and hotels up and down the place. And the dog escaped, presumably onto Oxford Road here, and was found on Oxford Road and was taken to John Henry Davis, who liked the dog. It was a nice big St Bernard, and took it home to his daughter Elsie to look after, because they didn't know whose dog it was. And it was because of Elsie's love for the St Bernard that Man United came to be formed out of Newton Heath. So I'll now play a section of a really fantastic, this is probably one of the things that got me interested in the history of football, a really good old, I think it was a local news report interviewing Elsie in the 1950s, I'm just going to say, where she relates the story of how Major and Newton Heath Football Club came into their lives.
Mrs. Elsie Partington, now 84 years old, was then just coming up to her 12th birthday. She lived in a magnificent old house outside Manchester. Her father, J.H. Davis, was a rich and successful brewer in the city. One day he brought home a large, friendly St. Bernard dog, which had been found wandering about, obviously lost, near one of the public houses owned by the brewery. Mr. Davis gave the dog to Elsie to look after.
His clerk had found it on Oxford Road. It was lost after being shown at a dog show. And we found the name out on the collar, and that was how we got in touch with the owner. His name was Harry Stafford. Anyway, my father sent for this Harry Stafford, and he came to the house, and I got so enamored with the dog, I worshipped it nearly. It was a week after when we found him, and my father tried to strike a bargain with him. Would he sell him the dog? So Harry Stafford said, "Oh, I would sell that dog for anything in the world. He saved my life at sea there was a man drowning, and I rushed in to save him. The man got very obstreperous, and I had to knock him out, hold him with one arm, and whistle my dog from the shore, got hold of his collar, and he brought us both in. He said, otherwise I would have been drowned with the man. So I think the world of that dog.
But J.H. Davis was nothing if not tenacious. Elsie's birthday was approaching, and he wanted to give Major to her as a birthday present. He checked further on Harry Stafford's background and found that his chief delight was playing for a local football team called Newton Heath. This is where Newton Heath used to play, at the back of the chemical works in Clayton, Manchester. Davis discovered that the club's prospects at that time were about as murky as the fog which shrouds their old pitch on this December day. Newton Heath was bankrupt, and the bailiffs were about to move in. As a hard-headed businessman, Davis knew how to press home his advantage. He put it to Stafford bluntly. Which means the most to you, your club or your dog?
So Harry Stafford thought for a long, long time. He said, well, I adore my dog. And he said, I adore my team as well. But, well, he said, what would you do, Mr. Davis? He said, well, I would take it over completely, furbish you with a brand new team, and you would still be retained as captain, and we'd make the ground decent, and everything would be made all right for you. Now, if I do that, will you let me have the dog? So Harry Stafford said, well, under those circumstances, we'll make it a bargain. So the bargain was made in the morning room at Moseley Hall, Cheadle, where we lived, and Harry Stafford went away very happy.
And amazingly, that hall that Elsa lived in with the dad, John Henry Davis, still exists. It's called Moseley Old Hall, and it's in Cheadle village, just near Stockport, and I think I've gone past it. It's down one of these roads. Towards Cheadle. Try the next one. Cuthbert Road. Could it be Cuthbert Road? You don't hear Moseley Old Hall. Looks unlikely, but it's not impossible. In fact, I think this is it on the left. There you go, look at that. Moseley Old Hall. Now this is where Man Utd was formed. John Henry Davis's house. And I guess their morning room, well, it's going to be not at the front here, but at the back left, I would think, which would be east and south facing. And that's where John Henry Davis and Harry Stafford had their meeting, and he decided to buy Manchester United. As you'd imagine, it had its nice grounds which were sold off in the 1940s for housing development by the current owner. Part of the deal was they changed the name and the club colours. So they changed the name to Manchester United. The club colours became red, black and white. And on the 24th of April 1902, they became Manchester United. And that agreement happened in there, which is now a private house. So I shan't go nosing around. But once they took over ownership of the club, they could see the potential. Football was booming, but the ground wasn't great for lots of ways. polluted, and the actual pitch itself was awful. So John Henry Davies decided they needed to move. So he started looking around, and that's when he came up across some land towards the new port of Manchester and towards Salford. Found a nice bit of land at Old Trafford. And that's where the story continues. So they moved to Old Trafford, a little plot of land between the Bridgewater Canal that I'm going over right now, and to the left is the Cheshire Railway, and to the right was Port of Manchester with Salford Quays. There we go, that's Hotel Football, which I think is at Gary Neville's, one of his developments. And the road to the right there is Sir Alex Ferguson Way. But unfortunately you can't drive straight through past the stadium up there. It was completed in 1909 with an 80,000 capacity, very different from what it is now, obviously. But it was seen as being the best stadium in the world at the time. They were trying to make it 100,000 capacity, but it was going to cost extra 30 grand when the whole build cost was 60 grand. So they cut it back to 80,000 capacity. We've been here ever since. Over 100 years. How long we're going to be here for, or have the stadium in its current state, I don't know, but seems like they're going to find the money to improve it to a 100,000 seater, but we shall see. So there you go, that's the history of, well, where Man United's origins were and the stadiums were. Moved in 35 years, just 35 years from being a part-time club for a railway company to moving to be a professional club with an 80,000 seater stadium, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Although the players in those days wouldn't have dreamt of the kind of money that people could earn playing football. There we have it, the history of Man United. Until next time, we'll do something more open air, hidden back roads.